What's going on, guys? Boss6 here, back to another video, and today, well, folks, I'm wearing the shirt, and you know what that means. It's time for another edition of the Metal Month Retrospective, and folks, this one's a doozy because, good Lord Almighty, this band is absolutely insane and absolutely ridiculous in every sense of the word. Of course, I'm going to be ranking all 16 studio albums from none other than the Godfathers of Grind themselves, Napalm Death. Jeez Louise, this discography is pretty tough to rank because this band, aside from maybe an album or two, was pretty damn hard to rank because, good Lord, I did not think of how ridiculous this band's discography is. And, yeah, I'm going to be talking about them and the backstory here a little bit. But before I get into their history, how did I get into Napalm Death specifically? Well, growing up, especially getting out of high school, I wasn't familiar with death metal at all. In fact, I wasn't really a fan of the genre at all because, I don't know, I just didn't like the musicality, and I didn't like how production was, essentially. I was very nitpicky as a teenager, but then when I got out of high school and I listened to bands like Death, Morbid Angel, Obituary, and so on and so forth, I finally was able to get into death metal. Now, how they get into grindcore is a completely different thing. Grindcore is not really a genre that is for me personally. I don't mind it, but it's not like my favorite genre of the world. It's a neat little genre I don't mind here and there, but it's not something I'm going to be listening to every single day. But it wasn't until I watched the Thralls of Metal ranking that I watch on a day, that I will watch every now and again. Like, I almost watch that ranking religiously because, well, that's one of Necrotic Nick's favorite bands, and this really helped me lead into the band itself, and I eventually started listening to a couple of their songs, and eventually got a couple albums. I even saw them live with the Melvins just back in May, and holy shit, they rocked my fucking world and wrecked my neck at the same time. So, yeah, and I'll get to a couple of the songs I did listen to later on here in the video. But, yeah, this is going to be a pretty lengthy one, folks. This one might go over an hour or so. So, kick back, grab a snack, grab your loved one, and, well, join me on this wacky, weird, and wild discography from the grindcore legends themselves, Napalm Death. So, before I get into the actual albums, we gotta talk about the backstory, and holy shit, this backstory is fucking ridiculous. So, Napalm Death was formed in a village near Coventry, England in May of 1981 by two teenagers, Nick Bullen and Miles Ratledge, as teens. They underwent some name changes before eventually settling on Napalm Death. They were known as Civil Defense, The Mess, Evasion, United Hatred, and Sonic Noise. Now, they were heavily inspired by the anarcho-punk scene, mainly the band Crass, and they underwent their first lineup. With, let's see, Miles, wait, hold on, I lost my train of thought. No, Nick on bass and vocals, Simon Oppenheimer on guitars, and Miles on drums. So that lasted from the summer of 81 to January of 82, and around that time, Graham Robertson joined bass, who would, in January of 82. Now, Simon would actually leave in August of 82, and he went under a whole different monikers, like, Sir O, and some other bullshit that he went under at that time, but, around that time as well, Simon again would leave in August of 82, and he was replaced by Daryl Fedesky, who would also leave in October of 82. Robertson would then switch to guitars, and ex-Curfew bassist Finbar Quinn would join. Now, they would play concerts throughout 82 and 83, sharing billings of Ambix, the Apostles, and Intisect. 4 demos were recorded in 82 and 83. One of them was actually released on the Bullshit Detector Volume 3 compilation. That's a pretty cool compilation there, if you ask me. Which was released by Crass Records in 84. Now, towards the end of 83, the band decided to go on hiatus because they were essentially burned out because, again, they were teenagers at that point. And, they decided to take a break because, being around that age is pretty damn hard, especially when you're just making intense punk at that time. Now, during this point, Bolin would actually meet guitarist Justin Broderick, and who would later go on to have the same liking of music as Nick. And Nick would actually join Justin's project named Final for a bit in '83. Now, in July of '85, Napalm Death would briefly reform to appear at a concert at the Mermaid in Birmingham, which would be Final's final show. So the band consisted of Miles on drum, Nick on vocals, bass guitar, Graham on bass and guitar, and Darren Arrington on guitar. Now, after the show, Justin would join the band as a guitarist with Bolin as bassist and vocalist. And the band would begin to blend different elements of, post-punk, a la Ambix and Killing Joke, heavy hardcore punk, along the likes of, let's see again, I'm losing my notes here, Discharge, and thrash metal, a la Possessed and Celtic Frost. Now, the band played their first concert as a trio in August of '85 and began to regularly play in the Birmingham area with a slew of bands, including Icons of Filth, Concrete Socks, the Verruckers, Indecent Assault, Decadence Within, and the Groundhogs. Now, in September of '85, bassist Peter Shaw would join, and they recorded their famous Hatred Surge demo that year. Following the demo, Nick and Justin wanted to go more into the more extreme direction, which Miles wasn't a fan of, and would exit the band. And a local fan by the name of Mick Harris would join on drums, and he would basically, I wouldn't say be a long-time member, but he would stick around for a little bit. So, Mick would join, and the bass became a three-piece with Nick on bass and vocals, Mick on drums, and Justin on guitar. They would play concerts with local punk acts and recorded their 6th and 7th demos, From Enslavement to Obliteration and Scum, and I'll get to those here in a little bit. So the latter of which was intended to be an LP with English hardcore act Advestic on Manic Ear Records, but that would not come into fruition. Now, the band would go through a litany of lineup changes, which resulted in Nick becoming disinterested in the band's direction, and around this time, Jim Whiteley would join on bass. Now, the band played a few concerts as a four-piece before Justin would leave to join Head of David. Meanwhile, the rest of the guys would get to recruit former Unseen Terror guitarist Shane Embry, who would become a big part of the band going forward. Now, Shane was already a fan of the band at the time and gave Ex-Annihilator and future Cerebral Fix guitarist Frank Healy a trial period. Now, after Justin left, that was the final straw for Nick, as he would leave in the summer of '86 to focus on English literature and philosophy at university, so good for him. So this left the band without any original members. With Justin and Nick gone, the rest of the guys looked to find replacements. Enter current Carcass guitarist to this very day, Bill Steer, to fill out guitar duties, and they asked their friend and obscure vocalist Lee Dorian to do the vocals. So finally, after all these lineup changes, they were finally able to record their studio album, which is kind of confusing in itself. They went into Rich Bitch Studio, which is pretty fun, and released on Earache Records on July 1st, 1987. So now it's been about 48 years since this album has been released. Yeah, it's nearly been 50 years since this album came out. Scum. Again, this was released on Earache Records, and this is a tale of two sides. Each side is a different lineup. The only consistent member is Mick Harris on drums. And this was recorded about a year apart. Now, as far as the ranking goes, I have this as my number 13. It's a weird album. It is the beginning of Grind, but sometimes your first step is not always going to be your best. Highly influential? Oh, absolutely. Is it great, though? Not my opinion. Like, the it's a weird album if you think about it. Like, there are some good riffs, like mainly side A. I think side A is the best side out of both because it's a little more cohesive, and not so much scattershed. Like, I think production on side A, which was Nick Boland's side of the band, I think is actually solid. There's some good riffs on there. Instinct of Survival is really good. I love the title track. Siege of Power has killer riffs. Human Garbage is fun. And I love You Suffer for the novelty that is. The world's shortest song. It's literally 1 second. And they play that live. And it was awesome. Greatest 1 second of my life. But then we get to track B, or side B. Yeah, that's where things really really go off a cliff here. The production's actually pretty bad on side B, if you ask me. CS, aka a Conservative Shithead's pretty fun. Stigmatized is alright, and I do like Success. That's a pretty cool song, but overall, this album is not that great. It's a pretty messy album for the most part, but you gotta start somewhere, so I can give them credit. And this is essentially the first grindcore album released, but it's not the first grindcore album recorded. Actually, the band Repulsion, with their album Horrified, was recorded before this one, but didn't release, I think, until shortly after Scum. So, yeah, I mean, you gotta start somewhere, but man, this would this would not be a great start to the album. So, yeah, it's my number 13. Again, it's influential, but that doesn't automatically make it great. So that's where I have it ranked right here. So after Scum, Jim would leave and Shane would join and move to bass, and he would actually be the longest standing member of Napalm Death going forward, being there till this very day. And I got to see him live, and he was really, really, really fun to see live. Great guy, really, really, really good stuff. So the band would appear on 2 compilations, North Atlantic Noise Records and Pathological, and after recording 2 Peel sessions and a split 7-inch with Japanese band SOB, back into the Rich Bitch studio they went, which sounds very odd if you say it like that, for Shane's recording debut on September 16th, 1988, we would get From Enslavement to Obliteration. This again was released on Earache Records, and I have this ranked number 11. I think it's a bit of a step up over Scum, but not by a whole lot. Again, they're still trying to find their footing, and if I'm going to be completely honest, this felt like more like the debut than Scum overall. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that Scum's the drizzling shits, but again, this album felt a little more cohesive and a little more consistent. And there actually are some really damn good stuff, like It's a Man's World, for example. I really like that song. And no, that's not it's not a cover of who the hell was it, Stevie Wonder? Is it Stevie Wonder that saying It's a Man's World? No, it's not a cover, that's an actual original song. But Unchallenged Hate's, I think, actually pretty good. There's some nice riffs on that song. Retreat to Nowhere is pretty fun. They actually played that live. I think that's really cool. Display to Me, I think that's good. I like the title track. Inconceivable is really good. Mentally Murdered's great. And I like The Curse. It's kind of got like a darker, doomy feel, which I really, really do appreciate. The one thing, though, that really drives me up a fucking wall with this album in particular, I can't stand Lee Dorian's vocals. Like, I can't. And that's why I don't really listen to Cathedral at all. Because I just can't with his vocals. Like, he sounds like, for you wrestling fans, he sounds like The Rock imitating The Big Show. Like, oh! He kind of sounds like that, and it's, like, it works somewhat here because it's a little endearing, but in Cathedral, I just can't with the vocals. But yeah, it's a little bit better, but not by a whole lot. So that's where I stand on it. Overall, number 11, it is what it is. So after Enslavement to Obliteration, it recorded an EP titled Mentally Murdered, which will be the last recording lineup of Harris, Steer, Embry, and Dorian. Now, the EP was recorded at the Slaughterhouse Studios, which seemed to blend grindcore and death metal. and the band would continue to tour, but after a tour in Japan, another lineup change happened. Bill would leave to fully join Carcass, which, yes, and Lee would go on to form the Doom Act Cathedral. Now, thankfully, they would get recruits quickly. They picked up former Terrorizer guitarist Jesse Potato and former Benediction vocalist Mark Barney Greenway. Now, this lineup would take part of the Grind Crusher tour, which consisted of Morbid Angel, Carcass, and Bolt Thrower. That's a hell of a lineup if I've ever heard one. Now, they also get former Righteous Pigs guitarist Mitch Harris after the tour, which is kind of weird because you have a Mick Harris in there, but Mick wouldn't be long after this one, after this next album. Now, for this new one, they would actually fly all the way to Florida to Morrisound to work with the one and only Scott Burns, and this will be a different sound for the band. On July 30th, 1990, which is about to be, it's about to be 35 years old. Holy shit. On July 30th, 1990, they would get Harmony Corruption. Now, this is a different sounding album for the band, mainly because this is essentially their lone death metal album. All the grind aspects are essentially gone from this album in place of just heavy, chunky riffs. And, well, it was 1990, and, well, if you want to release some really damn good death metal, Morrisound Studio is the way to go. This is my number 4, though. I absolutely love this album. I know my good buddy Levi actually thinks this is the best Napalm Death album. So, there you go there. But this is just really, really, really damn good stuff. The riffs are absolutely heavy. The vocals are really nice. And, Barney was a really great fit for the band. And I like the drum work in particular. Now, I do have one complaint with the album, but I'll get to it afterwards. But all these songs kick ass. Vision Conquest is awesome. The Truth Be Known. Inner Incineration, I like when Barney goes blast, and then they just blast. So, there you go there. Unfit Earth is really good. That's a big standout. And actually, Florida Alumni would actually come in for this one. Glenn Benton of Deicide and John Tardy of Obituary would actually do vocals for Unfit Earth, which would spark a little bit of a controversy that I'll talk about here in a little bit, which I don't necessarily get, but that's really great. Circle of Hypocrisy is a pretty good deep cut there. Mind Snare, of course, Suffer the Children, which is a big standout and is a live staple to this very day. They played that live. That was absolutely great. And Hiding Behind is a really damn good track, too. Now, the one complaint I do have with this album is that production's not the best. I do think this is honestly one of Scott Burns' weaker production jobs. But it's not bad. It's just a little muddy sounding. Which is kind of a shame, too, because if it was produced a little bit better, this honestly may have been my number 2. But, unfortunately, that was not the case. But this is still my number 4. I still really, really, really dig this album, and yeah, again, this will spark some controversy that I'm about to talk about, but nonetheless, this is a fucking excellent album, and it's my number 4. Now, after this album, they released a live album called Live Corruption, and Harmony received a lot of negative reactions, with fans claiming that the band sold out, which makes no sense to me because you're going from one string to another. It's not like they just fucking decided to cash out and just make a fucking groove metal album, which, spoilers for a little bit later, but it's not like they were making like radio hits or making some, quick cash or anything like that, so I don't know what that was all about. So they would also record another EP called Mass Appeal Madness, and this EP would be on a compilation titled Death by Manipulation, which was a compilation of EPs. Now, Mick Harris would leave and record the Guts of a Virgin album with the band Painkiller. Cool, why not? So that left the band without a drummer. Enter Danny Herrera, which I think was a bit of an upgrade, if you ask me, because I think Mick was a good drummer, but I think Danny had a little more speed and a little more technicality to him, which I really do appreciate. And Danny was also a good friend of Jesse, and he had a very unique drum style compared to Mick's. Now, with this new album, they would get Colin Richardson for production, and he will be very well known for his other production jobs with bands like Machine Head and all that stuff. So, on May 18th, 1992, we would get Utopia Banished. Now, this is essentially a culmination of the first two albums and Harmony Corruption. Basically, Death Grind, nice into a very, 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 very nasty package. And you know, Death Grind was basically a little bit well known in the underground at this point because obviously Terrorizer with World Downfall came out a couple of years prior. But Napalm Death released this fucking banger of an album. This is my number 2, by the way. This is a Death Grind classic, essentially. And, yeah, it's just a fantastic album from start to finish. I have somewhat of a style of it. This is actually called Dystopia Vanquished, which I think is pretty cool if you ask me, which is kind of a play on for this album right here, but absolutely killer stuff, and just classic songs. I Abstain's a fantastic, I wouldn't say opener, because the album opens up with a very weird track, Discordance. It sounds like a Ministry track, which is a little odd, but that's besides the point. Dementia Excess, Cursing of the Blind, Idiosyncratic, Arianisms, Judicial Slime, Distorted the Medium, Got Time to Kill, Upward and Uninterested, Exile. Like, this album is just firing on all cylinders. I like the mix. The production's really damn good. There's a nice, like, heft to the guitars. And it's just fucking maniacal throughout. So, yeah, this is... I'm losing my train of thought here. This is a classic unlike any other, and it comes into my number 2. So after this record, they record the World Keeps Turning EP, which is another standout track. This was they would tour their dicks off in Europe with Dismember and Obituary on the Campaign for Musical Destruction tour. Then they toured the U.S. with Sepultura, Sacred Reich, and Sick of It All. And again in the States in 92 with Carcass Cathedral and Brutal Truth on the same tour. So in 93, they released a pretty famous EP titled Nazi Punks Fuck Off. This is essentially was a Dead Kennedys cover and was inspired by the band when they went to South Africa in 93 and encountered some white nationalist groups. And all the money from the EP went to anti-fascist organizations. And I'm guessing the reason why is because the people didn't like the song Arianisms or basically anything Barney said. Because Barney's very well spoken about when it comes to like politics and, you know, religion and, you know, social views and all that stuff. Because, trust me, he said a lot of nice things when I saw him live. So around that time in 93, they were actually scheduled to be in the Jim Carrey classic Ace Ventura Pet Detective before they got replaced by Cannibal Corpse. I'm not 100% sure what happened there because Carrey claims to be like a grindcore guy because he even talked about Napalm Death in a pretty funny interview that he did back in, I think, like the 90s or like early 2000s, which, look it up, it's pretty fucking funny, but this will actually start the big success of Cannibal Corpse, so good job, everyone. So, sometime after that, it was studio time, and they would actually get producer Pete Coleman, and with some different elements thrown in there, too. Now, on May 2nd, 1994, we would get Fear, Emptiness, Despair. Now, again, the different elements in question were basically some more alternative like metal tracks because they were inspired by Soundgarden, Helmet, along with like Discharge and Doom. So you get a little more of those like groove metal, like alternate tracks thrown in there, but in Napalm Death style. Now, I did rank this a little bit low. I ranked this number 10. I know someone's going to be a little pissy about that one, but I have my reasonings. It's a good album, but I think the first half is very, very, very strong. Second half, I kind of pick and choose with it. But it's not that I don't like this album. It's just I like the other albums more than this one. But we're getting to the more groove metal era of Napalm Death. And I will say this right here, right now. This is the best album out of that entire groove metal era. Because while it is groovy, it's heavier than hell. You still get those more like death metal like chugs. And I really dig that. And it's more exemplified on the first track, Twist the Knife Slowly, which actually will be on the Mortal Kombat soundtrack, which I think is very nice. Hung's really good. Rename Nameless is awesome. Plague Rages is great. More Than Meets the Eye is great. Armageddon X7. Like, the drum work on this album is really damn good. And just, again, the first half is good. Second half, it kind of tapers off a little bit for me. Again, it's kind of... I kind of pick my spots with this one. But overall, solid album. Not really a whole lot to complain. I guess maybe the album cover's a little weak, and the logo is... It is what it is. Like, they were going for a little more commerciality with this one. And, well, how commercial can you have for a band like Napalm Death to be? I mean, you change the logo so it doesn't look like somebody fucking scratched on it. So I guess that counts for something. But, yeah, it's my number 10. Not because it's a bad album per se. It's just there's other albums I like more than this one. But again, out of all the groove metal albums that we're getting into for Napalm Death, this is by default my favorite. So that's all I need to say. So following the album, they would do some live shows with Entombed, Obituary, and Machine Head. And, oh boy, they released the EP Greed Killing in late 95. And they went back into the studio with Colin Richardson back in the producer chair. On January 22nd, 1996, we would get Diatribes, however you want to say that word. This is my dead last. This is my number 16. Oh, boy. Yeah. This is, this was not a good, listening experience for me, folks. I believe I listened to this album, like a couple days ago, and, man, I feel like it's still kind of going on. Like, this album is just bland, boring, uninspired, and just very, very, very dull. And this was at a point where Barney was really starting to be disinterested. He wasn't liking the direction the band were going through at this time. He wanted to get back to the grind sound, but the record label wasn't allowing that. And it's a shame, too. And just this album just doesn't have anything going for it for me personally. Like, there's a couple decent tracks, like Corrosive Elements and Glimpse into Genocide, but other than that, those songs themselves can't really help this album, man. I guess the only thing I can really say about this album that's actually not bad is actually Daniel Herrera's drumming. I think his drumming actually kind of salvages the album a little bit, at least in my eyes, but like, the production's too clean for them. There's not really a lot of heft to the guitars. And just, Barney just doesn't sound like he wants to be there. Like, there's some, like, weird, like, rapped vocals, like, especially on Cold Forgiveness and Curse to Crawl. Like, I don't know what they're doing with that. It just, like, this whole album has, like, a bit of a nu metal feel, too, which I get a Colin was, you know, kind of producing stuff around that time, but you can't do that with Napalm Death. It's not a Napalm Death, it's not a Napalm Death album. Like, it feels like the best album Helmet never wrote. And again, Barney just sticks out like a sore thumb on this one. So, yeah, it's not really that good. It's really not. I just couldn't get into this album as much. Yeah, I don't know. I just couldn't really get into this one either. And I don't know what the hell the album cover is supposed to be. It's very odd, but yeah, that's all I can really say about this album. Really nothing happens at all. Like, you can skip this album and you wouldn't really miss much. So, it's my number 16. I kind of figured it was going to be. So, this was the tipping point for the band, mainly Barney, who, again, didn't want to really do this and wasn't really feeling the style. He would say in interviews he hated the style that the band was going through at the time, but Earache wanted to do that, so that's how Diatribes was basically made out. So Barney left in 96 and would actually join fellow British grindcore act Extreme Noise Terror, which them, Napalm Death, Carcass, and Bolt Thrower are actually kind of like the big four of the grindcore pack for a little bit, even though Bolt Thrower kind of, you know, stayed away from that, and more so Carcass, but initially they kind of were, which I can understand. And so Barney would join Extreme Noise Terror, and they record the album Damage 381, which is kind of funny around that time too, because the vocalist of Extreme Noise Terror, Phil Vane, may he rest in peace, would actually join Napalm Death for a little bit, but unfortunately that didn't really pan out all that well, with Shane approaching Phil saying, sorry man, this just isn't working, and, Phil understood, and, he wasn't butthurt about it. So Shane would actually call Barney and actually ask to rejoin the band, and Barney was a little hesitant. He was still jaded by this whole experience, so he didn't know how to really feel about it until, the band actually played some tracks for Barney, and Barney was like, okay, a little bit better than what we were actually doing. So Barney would actually came back to the band. So with Barney back in, and they get a little engineer for this new album by the name of Andy Sneap. Yes, that Andy Sneap. He actually engineered a Napalm Death album. Life is odd sometimes, but it is what it is. So, back to the studio they went. On June 3rd, 1997, we would get Inside the Torn Apart. This one is better. It's my number 15. It's still groove-oriented, still a little too polished production, but I do think that this album has a couple more standout tracks than Diatribes. Some of the energy's back, not all of it. It's a little bit inspired, not really. I mean, again, this is a very, kind of low point for the band at this point, because, again, groove metal at this point was starting to die out just a little bit. Well, more so the new metal stuff, but, well, I wouldn't say die out. Pantera was, still doing some fine stuff, even though I'm probably going to have a controversial statement. I'm not a groove metal guy personally. I didn't mind it initially, but as I've gone on, it's just not really been my cup of style, and, Pantera's not really for me personally, but there's some decent tracks on here, like Breathe to Breathe is not bad. Reflect on Conflict is pretty solid. I like Low Point, that's a fun song, but yeah, besides that, nothing's really going on here. Again, you could have just deleted these two albums from the band's discography, and you really wouldn't miss much. So, that's just how I am personally. Again, it's not terrible, but it's not great either. It's just a better version of Diatribes, which is not saying a whole lot. So, yeah, that's my number 15. That's all I literally gotta say. So, after Inside the Torn Apart, they would actually record the EP, Breathe to Breathe. And this new album would actually be the last with Colin Richardson as producer. And on October 26, 1998, we would get Words from the Exit Wound. This one is a little bit better. I have this ranked as my number 14. We are moving up the scale a little bit, ladies and gentlemen. This will actually be the last album on Earache Records. And boy, oh boy, that breakup's going to be a little spicy here, but I do think that this album has a little more going for it. Mainly in production, it's a little less clean. There's a little bit of grit thrown in there. Not a whole lot, but a little bit of grit thrown in there. Excuse me. But there's actually some interesting clean vocals that Barney does, which his cleans are essentially a Burton C. Bell and Ozzy Osbourne had a love child. That's essentially what his cleans sound like. More so Burton. He sounds a lot more like Burton C. Bell, at least in my ears. But the Infiltrator's fun, Cleanse and Pure, Ulterior Exterior, Throwing Down a Rope has some good moments. This album is getting better. Again, it's not a whole lot, but it's something at least. You could have honestly... this felt like the proper follow-up to Fear, Emptiness, Despair. Again, you could have taken the Diatribes and Inside the Torn Apart out, and you wouldn't really miss much. This felt like the proper follow-up to Fear, Emptiness, Despair. It kind of reminds me of Machine Head's The Burning Red a little bit, but without some, new metal-y stuff, kind of. So, yeah, that's all I really gotta say. Again, not a whole lot's really going on, but there's some that there are some things that do keep this album a little bit higher than the last two. So it's my number 14. But we're gonna get to the good shit here in just a little bit. So after this album, the band wanted to go back to their old school roots, with Shane stating that they were inspired by Swedish grindcore act Napalm, which is kind of funny because Napalm, I believe, was inspired by Napalm Death. So funny how that works. Now, Shane would also say that it was hard to tour due to restricted budgets from the label, but Cradle of Filth and Nick Barker were able to help him out. And I think during the recording quality for Works from the Exit Wound, Colin and Shane were actually, barking at each other, and it was turned into a literal war zone because Shane wanted to get back to the grind, but Colin didn't want to do that. Sorry, I had to pop my knee there for a second. But yeah, they didn't want to do that, but Shane did, so they were literally butting heads with each other. But in '99, they appeared on Chris Evans' TFI Friday, and they would drop the Leaders Not Followers EP. And after getting dropped from Earache, they went to Spitfire Records, which would be distributed by Dreamcatcher Records in the UK, but it would be they would go through Spitfire Records, which would distribute to the US. So after getting picked up by Dreamcatcher and getting two producers by the name of Simon Effamy and Russ Russell to do production, this new album would have a theme going for it. Essentially, they're going to go after the industry, but most especially Earache Records. So, on September 26th, 2000, we would get Enemy of the Music Business. This is my number 8. Welcome back. Welcome back to the grind here, gentlemen. And boy, these guys are pissed. And they go after Earache on essentially every single track on this album. And holy shit, they did not hold back at all. Like, Barney is releasing all that pent-up frustration and anger that he has had that forced him to leave, essentially. Shane is just writing just amazing songs, and the drum work is fucking frantic throughout. Taste of Poison, Constitutional Hell, the breakdown on Volume of Neglect is awesome. Can't Play, Won't Play is very catchy. Blood Against the Cutting Edge, Necessary Evil, CS Part 2, which is considered a shithead Part 2 from Scum, is awesome. And A Fraction in the Equation, fucking killer stuff right here. Production is nice and gritty, a little bit raw sounding, especially with the drum work. The bass is really damn good. And again, Barney is just releasing all that pissed off energy that he has been having ever since he joined the band. So, yeah, this is just some killer shit. Not much more needs to be said. The album artwork's fucked up, which is really nice. They got their old logo back. This band essentially is back to where they were, and the fans could not have been happier. So, yeah, my number 8, welcome back. So this received positive reception from the fans, citing this as a bit of a comeback in a way. And after this album, this would actually start basically the breakup with Jesse in the band, because he was having some personal differences and didn't really want to play this anymore. So Jesse would write the follow-up, but he would not actually play on the album as a whole. So this is when Mitch would actually become the lone guitarist for a little bit. So after some touring, they stuck around with Russ Russell, and on October 21st, October 21st, 2002, we would get Order of the Leech. This is my number 9. It's a good follow-up to Enemy of the Music Business, but it's not a... how should I put this? It's a great... it's a good follow-up. It's a good album, but not a great follow-up, if you ask. It's like a sequel. It's not as great as the one that came before it, but still good for what it is. They still go after Earache on some tracks on here, and they're still pissed off about the record label. But Jesse's writing on here is pretty scattershot. Like, it's not very, cohesive, and it's not very consistent, which, Napalm Death tends to be. Also, the production on this album is a little bit muddy, but I do kind of like that there were some really damn good songs out of it. Like, Continuing War and Stupidity is great, Ice on Hate, Force of Fear, Narcoleptic, Out of Sight, Out of Mind's great, To Lower Yourself, Blind Servitude's great, Lowest Common Denominator, Forewarned as This Arm, and Blows to the Body is really damn good too. It's just, again, there's not, there's some good stuff in there, but I think they made better albums after this one. So, while it is good for what it is, it didn't feel like the proper follow-up to Enemy of the Music Business, but still really damn good, and it comes into my number 9. So in 2003, Shane and Danny would form the side project Venomous Concept with Kevin Sharp of Brutal Truth and Buzz Osborne of Melvins, which I've been hearing some good stuff about them. It's basically like a hardcore punk act that I've really been wanting to check out. Now, in 2004, they did another covers album, Leaders Not Followers Part 2. During this time, Jesse was going through personal issues and did not play on Order of the Leech and Leaders Not Followers, and would leave in 2004. Now, Jesse would go on to state that he just grew tired of the band and wanted to do something different. Now, after signing with Century Media Records and Jesse's departure, they would go into the studio basically as a as a 4-piece actually. So, on October 25th, 2005, we would get The Code is Red, Long Live the Code. This is my number 5. Holy shit, what an album this is. This is basically the essential follow-up to Enemy of the Music Business. Again, I like Order of the Leech, but I think this felt like the proper follow-up to Enemy of the Music Business, because god damn, this thing is just hostile as hell. And I would probably say one of the more aggressive albums they've done. Like, this thing is just a grindy bastard throughout. The opening Silence is Deafening in particular, like, that's just going to rip your face off. Write Your War, short, sweet, to the point, but it's get in and get out and get your shit wrecked. The title track's great. The groove on Climate Controllers is awesome. Instruments of Persuasion, I feel like, is a bit of a deep cut, and that actually features Jeremy Josta of Hatebreed. He does vocals on that and Sold Short, which I think is great. And there's a couple of other guest stars. Jello from Dead Kennedys and Jeff Walker of Carcass would actually do some vocals as well, which I think is a really unique. Jello does guest stars on The Great and the Good, which is another really damn good track. And Jeff Walker on Striding Purposely Backwards, which, that's good, but it wasn't good enough to get a nod for me. But Sold Short, All Hail the Grey Dawn, Pledge Yourself to You, and Morale. Holy shit, that song, it's weird, but I like it. I really do like that song. So, yeah, production, again, it's almost the same as Enemy of the Music Business, but I think they kind of cleaned it up just a little bit. But, yeah, this is another damn good album in their discography. So, yeah, not much more I can really say about it. It's my number 5. Now, around this time, Shane and Danny would be in a Null Nathrak for a tour, which is pretty cool. And they would start doing some good stuff here. And I think, I want to say... yeah, they would be in a Nathrak a little bit for this time. But unfortunately, some sad news happened in 2006. A couple weeks before their new new album was going to be released. Jesse Potato would die from liver failure, which really impacted the band, mainly Mitch, because they were really, really good friends. So this new album was going to be a way of kind of a tribute to him. But this new album would actually have another theme to it. Basically criticizing religion and taking an aim at politics and fundamentalism, especially here in the States, which, once again, Barney is not shy about talking about, because he said some very nice things about how our government's basically being run when I saw him live. That was fun, and I laughed. Anyways, on September 15th, 2006, we would get Smear Campaign. This is my number 6. It's just about as good as Dakota's Red. Like, you know, it's kind of like Order Leech with Enemy in Music Business. Like, it's a continuation of, you know, that sound, but with a little bit of a theme to it. It's a great follow-up, but not as good as the album prior. It's kind of like that mentality, but there are some absolutely banging songs. And a really interesting guest star, Annick von Giersbergen, who was a frequent Dev and Townsend collector and the vocalist of The Gathering. She does opening vocals on Weltsmarts, I think that's how you say that word, and Indifference, which is a little bit interesting here. And what I do appreciate about this album is that there's a lot more atmosphere on this album. Like, probably their most atmospheric album, which I really, really, really do enjoy. But Sing Fast, Let Go's catchy. Fatalist, Puritanical Punishment Beating. That's a full-on beating. When All Is Said and Done, Freedom is the Wage of Sin. Shattered Existence has killer riffs. Indifference is really good. Deaf and Dumbstruck, Intelligence Design's really good. Persona Non Grata and the title track in particular. Really, really, really damn good stuff. You know, the grind is really up in the speed on this one. Barney is just belting out whatever the hell he wants to belt out, and he just sounds great. Again, not much more I can really say about this one. Like, the production is essentially the same, because, you know, it's essentially the same, like, when they went on tour, they were like, hey, make sure you don't touch anything. I didn't touch anything. You guys have been going for about 3 months now, so there you go. But, yeah, this was some really, really, really damn good stuff right here, and it comes in at my number 6. So after Smear Campaign, they played a series of headline shows in support of the album, including with the band Gutworm. I've never heard of that band, but that sounds like a pretty fun band to listen to. In early 2006, they headlined a tour of Creator, A Perfect Murder, and Undying. Now, after the Smear Campaign tour, they did the '07 World Domination Tour. Shane would also collab with Mick Kenny of Anal Nathrak for a project that would be released on FETO Records in 2007. Now, with this new album, the band would actually be in production with Russ Russell. So on January 23rd, 2009, we would get Time Waits for No Slave. This is my number 1. I kind of figured it was going to be my number 1 because going into this ranking, it was either going to be this or maybe it was going to be possibly Utopia Banish. I was going to be my number 1. But as soon as I listened to this whole album again, I'm like, nope, this is my number 1. I kind of figured it would be because this was actually the first ever Napalm Death album I actually listened to. Because when I saw the Thralls of Metal ranking and Nick just basically gushed about how much he loved this album, I decided to check this bad boy out. And the first 2 tracks I listened to, On the Brink of Extinction and especially Downbeat Click, already had me sold on this album as a whole, because there's just something about this album that is unbelievably heavy. Like, the guitar tone on this album can decapitate a whole field of children and cattle. Like, that is how unbelievably heavy the guitar tone is. The punk and the hardcore style is up in the mix with this one. The drum work is just absolutely fantastic, and Barney just sounds monstrous on this album. The opening track, Strong Arm's a fantastic track. Dictate, I think it's Dictate, that's a fun track. Work to Rule, of course, the aforementioned On the Brink of Extinction is a nice, groovy, catchy chugathon. The title track is awesome. Life and Limb might be one of their heaviest tracks, and that's kind of saying something. I like the subject matter, like the lyrical context that they talk about. It's a little bit haunting. Downbeat Click, that stomping riff, oh my god, that's gonna cave in heads. Fallacy Dominion is just explosive hardcore punk. Passive Tense, Larceny of the Heart, Procrastination on the Empty Vessel, Feeling Redundant, De-Evolution ad nauseum. I could go on for fucking days with this one. There's maybe a track that I didn't really care for, but it's not bad. It's just the weakest out of the strongest tracks. And if I do had one like little gripe, maybe could have been 45 minutes, not 50, but I really can't complain with how fucking awesome this album is. So it's my number one, and it was kind of clear cut. So, after some touring and even appearing on the British teen drama anthology series called Skins, they were almost immediately back into the studio. So, about 3 years later, we get into 2012, and on February 27th, 2012, we would get the follow-up, Utilitarian. This one dropped for me for this one. I have this ranked as my number 12. This is a weird album. Like, there's something just a little off about this album for me. Like, I don't know. This album didn't really do a whole lot in the outset because, I don't know, I felt like this was a pretty disappointing follow-up to Time Waits for No Slave because, you know, I think production's really good, and there are some fantastic tracks I would jam on this album, but as a whole, there's not a whole lot of standout tracks, and they get a little weird with this album. John Zorn does saxophone solos on Everyday Pox. It guys have like a weird jazzy kind of feel to it. Like, I don't know, it's just a bit of a mess of a song if you ask me. And I don't know, like it kind of blends together a little bit, if you ask me. Like, at least with Time Waits for No Slave, at least there were some different elements going on. With this one, I do appreciate the experimentation, but it doesn't really work for me on this one. But there's absolutely some killer stuff. Like, Errors in the Signals, I think is a fantastic song. Protection Racket's awesome. Fall on Their Swords, Think Tank Trials is great. Blank Look About Face is a nice kind of empowering, anthem. Leper Colony, Opposites Repellent, and a Gag Reflex I think is fun, but I don't know, just this album just doesn't do a whole lot for me. I do kind of like the album cover though. It kind of reminds me a little bit of Scum, a little bit, but I don't know, just this didn't do a whole lot for me, and I was pretty taken back from it too. It's not bad. I still enjoy it, but out of all their modern output, at least since 2000, this is by far my least favorite. So it's not bad. I like it, but I wish I would have loved it more than what we actually got. So it comes in at my number 12. So in March of 2012, they headlined the Metal Mayhem 4 festival that was held in Nepal, which was actually the first time the band would actually tour in Nepal. So good job, guys. They were now scheduled to play a special one-off show at the Victoria and Albert Museum in London in March of 2013. However, it would be canceled due to concerns of the noise levels could damage parts of the museum. It's a grindcore band. What the fuck did you think was going to happen? So the event got moved to the De La Ware Pavilion in Bexhill and was performed in November of that year. Now in 2014, they released a cover of the Cardiacs to Go Off and Things via Bandcamp, and the money went towards that, the money for that went towards the frontman, who was a friend of the band, Tim Smith, who had a heart attack and a stroke simultaneously back in 2008, and I believe Tim, unfortunately, has passed. I think he passed away in 2017, if I remember correctly. Which, rest in peace, good sir. And the band announced in late 2014 via Facebook that Mitch Harris would actually take a hiatus from touring due to a family illness. So some guitarists filled in for tours, but Mitch was able to play it on the next album. And this next album, boy, it's going to be a little more raw on this one. So on January 23rd, 2015, we would get Apex Predator / Easy Meat. This is my number 7. Jesus Christ, this thing is absolutely hostile. And again, there's something about this production that makes it raw, gritty, and even more unnerving and unhinged than it actually is. And I would have put this number 5, but there was a few tracks that didn't do a whole lot for me. But I'd still say this is one of their better albums they put, at least in the new millennial, but good Lord Almighty, this thing is just absolutely killer. Like, smash a single digit. Metaphorically, Screw You is pretty fun. How the Year's Condemned, another good case of being, brutal but also catchy. Timeless Flogging, like, Barney is all over the map in terms of the vocals on that song in particular. Cesspits, the riffs on Beyond the Pale are really good. Stunt Your Growth is just a full-on rager. One-Eye's pretty fun, and Adversial slash Copulating Snakes, absolutely great stuff. Again, that production, I feel like, boosts this album a little bit, in my opinion, and yeah, great stuff. I like the album artwork, which people thought it was like a meat package at first, but I think it's actually like brains, like brains on an iPad or some shit like that. Like, whichever the case is, that's pretty genius if you ask me. So, yeah, another killer album for these guys, and it comes into my number 7. Now, in August of 2017, it was announced the band was working on more material for an early release in 2018, but that got shut down by Barney pretty quickly and said it would be released in 2019. Now, Barney would also say that Mitch would appear on the album, but not on tours. Shane would also go on to state in an interview with Extreme Metal Festival News that Mitch would come over and record guitars on a new album, and also Barney was recording some vocal parts, and the album wouldn't be released until early 2020. Now, around 2018, them, along with Lamb of God, Anthrax, and Testament, would actually open for Slayer's farewell tour until Slayer unretired. Oh, well, a little more money wouldn't really kill anybody. Also in excuse me. Also in 2018, they released a compilation titled Coded Smears and More Uncommon Slurs. And in October of 2019, Embry would announce that he will be unable to join on their North America tour and have Vernon Blake replace him in a live setting. Now, they will also release another EP titled Lodge Ravaged by Brute Force, and then it was studio time. And on September 18th, 2020, we would get The Throes of Joy and The Jaws of the Fetism. This is my number 3. I don't know how a band this late into their career can rank a top 3 album in their entire catalog. Like, that is absolutely ridiculous. And I feel like this is the culmination of all the band's sounds that they have done before and after. You've got your grind, you got your death metal, you got your groove metal stuff, you got your more punky stuff, like especially on Moral. There's the Killing Joke vibe, because they were massively influenced by Killing Joke. I'm shocked they didn't talk about that, but Fuck the Factoid's awesome. Backlash Just Because. That Curse of Being a Thrall, that's a fun title. Contagion is awesome. Invigorating Clutch. Oh my god. Those vocals are gross. Zero Gravitas Chamber is great. Flexing of the Muscle, the title track, and Barney doing like these weird chants on a belly full of salt and spleen. This is just some killer stuff right here, and I feel so bad for the poor pigeon, but hey, I guess we gotta make sacrifices every now and again. But yeah, this is an absolutely killer stuff. It's number 3 for me. Absolutely love the stuff. I can't get enough of it. Now, after this album, they really couldn't do anything due to the pandemic, but when restrictions were actually lifted, they can actually tour again. Hooray! Now, they release another EP titled Resentment is Always Seismic, a final throw throws in 2022, and there was rumors about a new album being dropped, which I was hearing those rumors too, but unfortunately nothing has came into fruition yet. And Barney says, at least when I saw him live, that the money was starting to run a little bit dry. So, not 100% sure is going on, but hey, hopefully they get it all figured out, because it's been about 5 years since we've got a new Napalm Death album. So, yeah, hopefully we get a new one soon. They're still touring right here, right now. And if you guys have not gone out to see this band, you're doing yourself a complete disservice. So, whatever you're doing, stop whatever you're doing, go buy tickets, and go see them live, because you will thank me later. So, folks, that does it for this ranking. I only managed to do it about an hour, so that's good. Didn't go too long with this one, because, again, 16 albums, and they were pretty damn hard to rank. So, yeah, there's all that stuff. Now, before I leave off with this video here, who am I going to be ranking next? Let's see. I've already done grindcore. Why not do death metal? And, well, I'm going from one band that has 16 albums in their discography to another band that has 16 albums in their discography. I'm going to be tackling next the reigning death metal champions of the world, none other than Cannibal Corpse. Oh, Lord, that's going to be fun. That's going to be a lot of fun. It's not going to be fun because I hear that band is unbelievably consistent. So, yeah, that's going to be great for me. So, folks, what did you guys think about this ranking? What is your favorite Napalm Death album? What is your ranking going to be? Let me know in the comment section below. Make sure you guys leave a like, leave a comment, tap the big red subscribe button, and tap the bell so when I upload, you guys will be notified. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. Most importantly, join the herd. Talk to you guys next video. Peace out.